we're basically wired to run fast when there's a grizzly bear or something, and then it's done. So this climate change is just like a real slow version of chronic stress in modern society. Like right now in modern society, we live with a tremendous amount of ongoing stress that doesn't ever let up. So it's kind of unseen, but that's another example where the time frame and the extent of it, it's across the whole society. There's a guy named Gabor Mate, and he talks about addiction. We're a very addictive society. It's very widespread, whether we're shopaholics, workaholics, alcoholics, whatever it is. So there's all kinds of social conditions that are kind of subject to these longer. So I'm kind of mixing in kind of what is the current condition. But what happens is when you have just really lots of unrelenting change that causes a phase shift. So here we are in our original, but we're now shifting to here. And so resilience is a measure of our ability to withstand this disturbance regime. And I was starting to say, in a natural ecosystem, they're 40% efficient, and they're 60% resilient. And the efficiency has to do with the identity. And the resilience is everything you need to stay who you are. And when your system gets overcome by disturbance, then that so much that you can't maintain who you are, then you go through a phase shift. Well, I'm showing it as being kind of like following the same shape, but actually it goes like this. You go from this to this, and then you hope you can get back to some semblance of balance. So you're going in this direction. And so one measure of resilience is the resistance to outside forces that make you be something different. Another measure of resilience is the time. If you can shorten the time to which you come back into equilibrium, then that's valuable.
This might not be related, but I think it's really related. We're 70% water, right? And the water molecule also goes through those phases. I mean, like water molecules get distorted through going through city water pipes because they take 90-degree angles, whereas if they're in a mountain stream, they stay nice and round. Is what one theory is.
Right. So that would be one of the disturbance regimes. Yeah, exactly, a disturbance factor. And water actually can recover its shape, so it's relatively resilient. So that's just kind of a way to think about, that I think about resilience. And if you look at this 40% efficiency, top-down command and control is all predicated on
efficiency.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not resilient.
Exactly. The efficiency of communication, because at the time that evolved, it was radios and dial-up telephones. You know what I mean? Almost like a string in a can. So almost all of our systems have followed this 40% efficiency. You can take almost any institution, all of our economic systems, our governmental systems, everything is in the form of maximizing efficiency.
Yeah, not 40%. You said 40. You meant 100% or 90 or something.
No, in a natural system.
In a natural system.
This
yeah.
is in a natural system.
Yeah, in a human system.
But our
predicated
human systems have mistakenly thought that the goal is efficiency, maximizing efficiency, maximizing output, and there's lots of drawbacks to that. To be maximally efficient to produce a particular output means you have to narrow your focus down. That means you're excluding quite a lot of what you need to consider in your whole system. You're simplifying, and we've done that. We've simplified our systems. Look at our academic institutions. Look at the degrees that we have. And you know, when I went to school, unbelievable as it might seem, fisheries biologists were graduated, and all they had to know was if it was a pool or a riffle inside the morphology of the stream banks. They didn't even know the word riparian. They didn't have a clue about any kind of upland terrestrial inputs. So, you know, that's an example of, you know, this single focus premised on efficiency and premised on, you know, just having information about all the parts and it'll all fit together. So, as we come into this context of, you know, this is now we're in the context part here. We know it is way more complex than that. You know, ecology is a science of complexity. And with this kind of pressure for change, we're gonna go into this period where we don't know where equilibrium is. Maintaining our balance is not gonna be easy. So, what happens? Well, where are we right now? I could say across both natural and our social systems.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we are in fragmentation. So, the way we've used our land, it's the resilience, the natural resilience of the land to recover. There's no cushion. You know,
No, there's no soil. We're desertifying at a rapid rate here even.
That's right. The biggest thing is soil. And where it shows is in the hydrologic cycle. You can see the condition
water
of the
retention
soil.
of the nature.
Exactly. That's exactly right. In our social systems, I mean, only two kinds of families. Normal, fucked up, and really fucked up. So, you know, it's a function of this. This is what Lisa will talk about this afternoon. So this is, I just wanted to kind of quickly go through the first two. This is really two. And if there's any other thoughts you have on, you know, what is resilience and what is the current context, those are the two questions that I was wanting to try to address there.
Well, I think there's a concept of rebound and the concept of new normal, that
Right.
you don't get back to this, what you had before. It may be
Right.
functional, but it's not identical.
No, that's right. I mean, I think that what we're talking about is trying to resist the change, trying to slow the rate of change so that we can sort of, at least in, you know, for instance, in the Northwest, that maybe we can give enough time, but you know, the time scales, when you look at the way evolution happens, the fish can't adapt fast
The
enough.
acidification of the Puget Sound is going to destroy that.
That's right. I mean, we're facing sea level. I didn't mark up all the things, all the actual impacts like sea level rise and acidification and loss of bird glaciers and change of the hydrologic cycle. How can we maintain 5 speed? Oh, population growth. Forgot to mention that. 2 times the population by 2040. And
Can I be devil's advocate here?
Sure.
Well, you mentioned that everything has its cycle and disruptions. Maybe it's part of the natural thing, and we don't have to really do anything. Is it possible that everything's okay?
No, I can't imagine that we had another humans in the past that didn't deal with the cycle, because there was never fossil fuels before, so I don't feel like this is
In your immediate experience?
true. Maybe humans have been cycling around, or something like us have been cycling around, and that would fit in her view, kind of.
I see it all on that,
The infinity
diagram.
symbol in terms of, but the whole point is, we are shifting. And there's clear evidence that we are shifting. And we have to, sorry, let me back off of that. But the idea is what we call new normal is a rationalization, or having to accept the fact that the change is here, and we could attempt to mitigate it by understanding what the consequences are.
What do you mean that change, I guess?
Sorry?
What do you mean by that change?
That we are
We have to
changing?
mitigate her.
Well, we're going to have to come up with some approaches that are going to help us survive in this new state, this new environment that we are having to accept.
Yeah, I don't have to, I mean, you mean accepting the future of global warming and all these things. I'm an
Well-
engineer, and I still look at it as solvable solution if we had actual control of the world. And we don't.
Yes, and so control would be,
Yeah.
but we're not gods. But yeah, it'd be nice to think that we could all come together quickly enough to respond in a way that might be able to resolve things. But we also have to be aware of the things we can't do.
You have the right population up here, because something to bring to mind is succession. Because in our workforce, between 25 and 30% of the workforce is going to retire in the next 5 to 8 years, because the baby boomers was a huge bulge.
Yeah, but I still feel like 80% of the workforce shouldn't be doing what they're doing anyways, because it's just churning this engine that's,
Right.
yeah.
But the thing the way that I look at that is, you know, the baby boomers, which I'm kind of in the bottom end of that generation, were the ones that built the systems. EPA, Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, how we're gonna regulate our way to health, which is, of course, not proved itself, and is living in all these silos. There was an aspect of aspiration and a visionary component to that. And I don't know how much that aspiration and that vision is existent in the next 2 generations of leadership, because the next 2 generations of leadership are good students of a really bad system, right? They know workarounds. They know workarounds. And the ones that stayed, you know, there are good people, but they've, talk about the 15% creativity that everybody needs for some job satisfaction. They haven't had that. They've been in their little cubicles. So I think and that generation, the next 2 generations of leadership, have to deal with the inertia of their own institutions in the context of the economy going like this, the politics still being what it is, the changes in the ecosystem, like uncertainty, the maximum uncertainty. So,
You're expressing, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, my focus is local.
yes,
And I don't think that we can solve the problems in South Africa or Bangladesh or
No.
Beijing. And my focus is in the Missoula, Five Valleys area.
Mhm.
And I think that's, from my point of view, after looking at a lot of this stuff over the last 40 years, that's the best we can do.
I think. I totally agree. In fact, I go so local that I start with the individual. I start with the individual.
Yeah, your neighborhood, your next door neighbor, your
Yourself.
person, yeah.
At the same time, I'm thinking I think local, but I want to think global because I'm a computer programmer. I know things scale, and we have to scale this out to the world. And how do we scale this out to the world?
Right.
And I can go right now to my computer in 1 hour, make an application that serves up the entire world if they would come to it. So we
If
have
they would
that
come to it.
exactly if they would come
There's
to
your,
it.
Well, there's an existing duality there.
There's your
Ourself,
qualifier.
if we really get into ourself, we are the world. So if you take care of yourself, you're taking care of the world. There's no way not to.
So I'd like to offer that one of the really beautiful, wise aspects of Sono's presentation is the invitation for us to remember that as an individual and as a human being in our human family is also a part of nature. That we are like the trees and the salmon and the water, and so, you know, the phrase disturbance regime is something that would be used in the ecosystem field. In the psychotherapy family field, it would be called trauma.
That's right.
So the Oso landslide, it's a trauma.
That's right.
So trauma is a part of nature's web experience. There's many different kinds of trauma. So the call, the invitation for us to, as humans, tend to, in our individual lives, in our family systems, these experiences of disturbances, of traumas, and to really, it's such a wonderful, your percentages, it's really great because it really helps us see how hard we have been on ourselves.
Yeah, it's like who hasn't
Really,
driven themselves at 100% efficiency
and that
felt
this
that?
didn't start today, this did not
Yeah.
start in this generation.
No.
So this did not start in this generation. So I just wanted to put a plug in for, like, we're part of this web.
Exactly.
Can I
That's
do a
right.
quick analogy on that? I heard somebody say the other day, it's like swimming in the ocean and you're drowning and the lifeguard comes to save you, but you're flailing so much that you like practically knock him out. Whereas if you just let go and floated, the ocean is buoyant and you would be okay. So there's a way that we can actually fight what's going on and make it worse rather than accept this natural cycle.
I noticed that the IPC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they talked about impacts in the previous report, and this time they almost exclusively talk about adaptation. And they've stopped talking about mitigation. It's kind of like, no, we don't.
well, it depends on the definition of mitigation. I mean, if we're talking about the, you know, calling it an exchange, you know, okay, I'm gonna dump over here, but I'm going to kind of fix this one, versus looking at the definition of mitigation in terms of, okay, I can kind of back off from what I'm doing. I don't have to screw up something else and then call it an offset. So there are different ways of defining mitigation. So it's not so much, it's understanding that we can't call it a trade-off anymore. We can't say, okay, I'm gonna screw this up and then I'm going to come over here and create, you know, a wetland. That's not gonna do it. We have to mitigate the overall big impacts by stopping what we're doing. And that is a form of mitigation at the same time, so.
Will, do you have some thoughts about how to engage people on a global level? I mean, we're aware of solutions. We know what has to happen, but
My main push in life is to make model projects and to have these things to be able to demonstrate that this is how this works and you can see this and this is undefiably, I don't have to prove anything, it's done, it's been shown. And so,
It's functioning, yeah.
and then that's kind of how I feel like, that's where I put all my energy. I'm not trying to get into any rhetorical debates with anybody. I'm actually trying to go out there and do the hard physical labor to get these things done and just bring people in and say,
Do.
and then trying to understand the systems I'm working within and in the incentive structures I'm working within people have been actually getting through with, and we're working entirely and trying to work in the monetarily side, because I feel like we're learning that 40% efficiency, 60% resiliency is amazing, and learning nature is, I mean, I don't know, we can amp nature, and we're just learning how amazingly like synergistic and beautiful and holistic it is, and that we're just like, when I look at like what they're doing to farmland, it's just like, that's the most retarded use of land ever. You guys could be making more cattle, more grass, healthier. We could have like, just using our brains and proper range land management, we could have made soil and made more cattle, made healthier things. It's just like, it's all about design. It's all in the human brains right now. We could have made paradise 10 times over with the amount of petroleum we've used. It's just like, I don't know.
It's adaptation.
So, I got on a tirade there, but like, model projects, so that's like how I get up. So they'll come to you. It's like, word gets out, everything happens. I don't know, information travels. I don't know how it's working. I'm just in I'm in a synchronistic world right now. I'm just floating around, just bouncing, so.
But that's good. If you're in the synchrony, then that means you're in the flow. That means you're aligned with something.
Yeah, I'm in the right stream,
Yeah,
for sure. Things
that's
are
right.
breaking, and it's the right thing to break,
That's right.
and then the right people, so, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. So I just want to just check and see what I have. Well, one of the things I just wanted to name about resilience, two of the qualities of resilience are connection and diversity. This is what constitutes resilience.
Yeah, networks, not.
Connection and diversity. So, so this can be at, the individual. It can be at an organizational. And it can be at a community level. And so in an individual, and almost all of these, in the context of disturbance or trauma, I think what we're trying to do is mitigate fragmentation. So either increase our ability to tolerate ambiguity, to be not overwhelmed. And what I was talking about this period, I don't know if our leadership's ready for this. I mean, and the problem is with what Lisa was talking about, when individuals get overwhelmed, they dissociate and check out, or they freeze and withdraw. In either case, any organization, and I'm already hearing it in local government, any organization where the leadership is overwhelmed, they are lost.
And I would guess most systems, that's what's happening.
Yes.
Whatever the organization is, that's what's happening.
That's right.
Because they all came from families,
Yeah.
number one,
Yeah.
where there was some disturbance.
And
The
there's,
landslides that happened in their families, where there was fragmentation in the family, it's in the leader, so it's just has.
well, they're also part of systems that are for 100% efficiency, so.
But the systems are created by the people, we create them. So the landscape, the natural landscape of the leader, that blueprint is in the system that we create.
So, one of the things I wanted to do was just identify some of the ways that we can achieve greater connection and diversity at these different levels, individual, organizational, and community levels.
I think as an individual, the fight I always fight is not giving in to cynicism and not
Okay.
being jaded and cynical.
Right, so that has to do with our beliefs, right? So looking at our beliefs and holding them lightly. Honestly, a belief is we have 1 million thoughts a day. I mean, if you try and meditate ever, right? That mind it's a thought generator. And a belief is just a thought that we dress up with our imagination. It's one of the ones that gets picked out of the bundle one. So, yeah, hold beliefs lightly. Hold lightly.
Yeah, I've always found when I'm listening to somebody and they're talking and all of a sudden I get that rush of emotion from something they've said, I realize that's a core belief that I hold very dearly, and they've just touched a nerve, and it's something I should examine.
Right. Yeah, those nerve buttons. Blink. Try having a 13-year-old daughter or son. Blink, blink. The other thing I think about, connection and this, and even it's related to this, how we hold our beliefs, is that mind-body connection. We are, most of our modern society is in their bodies from about here up. And if you have a spiritual practice, no difference. Your awareness is like, but where's the body? So mind-body connection is one that I would put up here.
Joanna Macy also talks about earth body.
Right.
And how humans are an expression of what's happening inside the world, the earth.
I think if you're in your mind, you're in the earth, because I'm a martial artist, and I feel like I'm always trying to be in my body always, but that means I'm tied to the ground and I feel the center of the earth, and then I know what the stars are, so it's like, I
Right.
feel like the mind-body brings you into the
Right.
earth, because that's where you are connected to the physical part.
Yeah, but actually, if you tune to those two chakras above your seventh chakra, what happened?
Hmm?
I mean, you can just mentally just find the two chakras above your seventh chakra, and you are of the earth, but it sure is, all of a sudden, way more expansive.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else on the individual that we think, contributes to this connection, this resilience?
Gardening,
Yeah. Yeah.
farming.
Right. So you're talking about really things that put our hands in the soil. Yeah, the earth's, the
Physical contact.
earth connection.
Are you saying, is this like between individuals or inside an individual in their own ecology of their own mind?
In their own ecology. Because, what happens is, somehow the individual, it may take the family and the community to heal, but there's still a self. There's still a self that you can access. It's a subtle aspect of yourself that you can access, that lies below your mental body, your emotional body. And it is have you ever heard the be here now? Being present to what is, breathing the air that's in the room right here now. And there's a space that unified consciousness that connects all of us right now. And there's attributes and qualities of that space that anybody that follows a meditation or a spiritual practice, one of the reasons they probably do is that the attributes of this space are stillness, balance, steadiness. And everything, we emerge out of that space, and we are that space, so it's the paradox. Almost any time now, if it's not paradoxical, I'm like, I don't know if it's true. It has to be paradoxical almost. So we are a unique sovereign self, and we're connected with everything.
As an individual in a hub within a group, a connected organization, if we are able to tap into this balance and finding that kind of personal resilience, it easily communicates out to the rest. And when you were talking about individual, finding their own ability to be resilient. I think, that's what the same paradox of everything we do, is making sure that if we can be healthy, then we can help provide health to those around us. Because other people can, whether they model it or come to your model or your project or whatever it is, if we are our own project, in essence. And I don't mean that in terms of ego, I mean that in terms of being,
Showing up,
yeah,
being present,
being present,
being
trying
accountable.
trying to exhibit hope. And I don't mean that, from the spirituality, but the idea that if you are practicing what you're trying to achieve, then others might be able to hook into that. So I don't like the idea of being strictly individualistic.
Right.
I don't like the idea of appearing selfish by taking care of myself, but at the same time, I know that, it's kind of the analogy with the parent on the airplane. Put your oxygen mask on yourself first so that you can help your child, because you will be of no benefit to your child if you...
Well, I think also when you can experience yourself as connected with everyone in this way, and you can really feel that connection, I think empathy is naturally arising. And I think that would go a long way in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, empathy.
And we don't I'm not pointing at you in the sense was referring to what you were saying, Anne, was that when our hot button issues, when somebody says something and we respond and think, oh, wait a minute, that just touched me, I'm not sure I understand how this made me feel, that we don't just process it in an unempathetic way, that we process it in a way, wait a minute, let me hear this word from the way they are trying to communicate it. Because like the term mitigation, I immediately saw response where, no, mitigation isn't the way, that's not what I meant by mitigation. So allowing me the opportunity to go in and express, okay, but there's another definition of mitigation that brought us back together to the idea that, oh, okay, she doesn't mean screw everything up here and try to balance it here. She's talking about fixing the problem as a way of succession or improved succession. So learning to hear each other, I guess, is kind of the big picture that I'm getting back to. And not allowing our knee-jerk reactions to miscommunication. Because I know.
So there's some other concepts I think that are relative to what you were talking about. So empathy, we talked about. Wholeness. Wholeness is a really interesting concept in terms of the beliefs, in wholeness, the judgments just don't mean anything. It's all part of us. We are the negative thoughts, the bad behaviors, the aspirations, the hope, the empathy, the love. We're all of it. And if you can accept our own ecology, then you grant. That's why I'm saying empathy is naturally arising. If we can accept our own wholeness, then you grant wholeness to everyone else.
It's the fragmentation that kind of creates the hierarchy, because you had talked about in terms of hierarchy, instead of being communal. I'm kind of caught up in this concept of agenics, an agenic individual versus a communal individual, in terms of gender behavior and role, agenic and communal. Cognitive psychology, and how people really evolve on a continuum, but agenic individuals are generally perceived as masculine versus communal individuals are often perceived as feminine. And instead of recognizing that we are all a continuum, that we are all a whole form of this duality, instead, but the fragmentation and the hierarchy and people who become perceived as being leaders and those who are perceived as being followers, instead of recognizing that we're all of those roles at any point in time, and we choose when we're going to, or we need to be able to choose, and there I'm shoving my belief on everybody, but we need to be able to choose as to when we are going to be verbal or when we're going to be hesitant.
And I think you just named a key point about this diversity, that one of the things that I like about, this is only my second bar camp, or first Mach 1, but second time to be here. And I'm seeing a convergence in the thought. And it's really, it doesn't matter whether they're talking about an agile system or the principles that are being named from all these different sectors are all about connection, relationship, agreements, and diversity. All the roles, all the functions, all the people. Everyone has something to contribute. Mm-hmm. So I'm very heartened to even just come back after 2 years and say, wow, the conversation's focused, it's converging in this area.
Mm-hmm. And that's let's see, what's the word here? The Native American tribes and the Tibetans, from a very young age, they look at the individual and they see which way they're going, and then they naturally let them go into that area to like excel. They're nurtured, and instead of our education system the way it is now, which is like a cattle feedlot.
Yes, right.
So
We're
there you go
subject to
again
that
with that.
fragmentation. Let's quickly, because we only have a couple minutes, if you want to just give me some of the attributes of organizations or community that lead to this connection and diversity, that would increase the resilience of your community or your organization.
Say that again?
Well, what would it look like? What connection look like for an organization?
Well, I think you can kind of extrapolate even from individual. I think holding lightly of beliefs or being.
Okay, you're saying that still applies. Yeah, that one seems to apply across humanity. Yeah.
Being flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's-
I think, I was thinking like things like connection is new partnerships. I mean, they were, one of the flash talks yesterday was like it was Alex, the poet. Take the most unlikely things and put them together. And then another speaker came up and said in virtually the same thing in the context of, Agile. So partnerships across diversity.
That's basically what I've been doing for 2 years, is driving around trying to find isolated pockets of people that didn't know about each other, and then just saying, hey, you need to meet this person, and then just watching like serious magic happen just by making these connections between organizations.
The supermind, what did they call it?
Megamind?
Megamind.
What did they call it last night? You get two minds together and they have this
Yeah.
The
supermind.
synergy, the third mind.
Mob programming. And in a community, it's partnerships across sectors, bring unlikely programs together. Look for collaborations. I have a sense that this is the fact that the names changed to Mach 1, it actually does mark sort of some new turn in the path of whatever this trajectory, whatever this line that this gathering is following. And I think you're going to see really interesting partnerships start emerging. There's this climate summit going on in Missoula. I'm like, this is so great. This makes me so inspired to come to Missoula and see this here. In Seattle, it is happening, but it's just not doesn't have the same impact. And so next time, the climate summit people will be here. Transition Town will be here. Who else, across the community. I think that Mach 1 is going to start becoming a wider community event.
We've got the Sustainable Business Council.
Yeah,
Just doing great stuff.
yeah. This is a hotbed of stuff happening here, not just in the software side, which is kind of cool that that's happening anyway, but.
And CFAP.
Any last comments, because I think we're at the end of our hour.
I just would like to throw the phrase, something about community resiliency. You know, so when a community goes through whatever disturbance it goes through, of any kind, you know, these principles are wonderful to hold in mind.
Yes. Yeah, actually, just to frame community resiliency after Katrina, they realized that emergency preparation and disaster recovery are two different things. And the disaster recovery is really a measure of your ability to recover from disturbance. And so as they rebuild, especially in New Orleans, the most forward thinking on community resilience is coming out of the disaster recovery from Katrina.
I'm part of a group of people that are getting ready to go back. There's still, the recovery's still happening.
Yeah.
A group of people who go there for a week every year this time, and it's still happening.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sono.
Thank you.
So I guess maybe the first thing we should do is just kind of get to know who's here, right? And what brought you here. So I suppose since I'm the one who called and kind of pitched the idea, I should probably talk first. I'm Alex Alvear. I have been a teacher and working in education for the last 13 years now. So 10 years of that has been doing poetry in the schools with elementary school kids, middle school kids, and high school kids in this area, and then also up on the Flathead Indian Reservation. And then also as an adjunct instructor at the U, and then eventually full-time faculty at Salish Kootenai College. My own background is that I'd always focused on being a writer and maybe a teacher. The whole idea of small business and entrepreneurship, that was something that I was like, no way, that's not anything on my radar that I would ever care about. But slowly over time, as a teacher especially, I see a lot of things about education and what we do in the classroom and how much there's a deep mismatch, even at the college level. In fact, I'd say especially at the college level, about the way we teach, the way we evaluate, and how that's such a disconnect with what a person really needs to survive and thrive beyond the classroom, and at how those skills just always seem so arbitrary. And so instead what I thought of was kind of like, well, if I could redo school, if I could rip the whole thing down and rebuild it, what would be the best kind of environment for a student or just any person to really learn and really thrive? And there's a whole bunch of models out there, whether you want to be in a Montessori, all these sorts of things. But what I was thinking of in terms of the little experiments that I've done as an instructor is that the more I force my students to go outside the classroom, and the more I force them to, instead of grades, I say, look, come up with an interesting idea or plan that solves someone's problems or makes people's lives better in some way. Okay? And make sure it's something that lines up with your talents. Make sure it's something that lines up with what you love to do, right? Or something at least that you're curious about. Go out and make that happen. Add value to somebody else. And I'm betting that you will leave this classroom feeling a lot more competent and a lot more capable and a lot more confident because of your ability to execute on that plan or that project, and your ability to just see your own actions have consequences and positive effect on people, and that you are an agent. You can do these things. That's much better than just turning in a paper to your instructor. That's much better than doing well on a test in a classroom, right? And so been kind of thinking about this and experimenting with this in my own teaching circles, students that come into my classes. And then I started thinking, like, well, if I could rip down school and do away with the whole thing, wouldn't it be much more interesting to take a bunch of kids who are into art, and maybe they don't even think of themselves as artists or creatives, take a bunch of kids who are, maybe they have a little bit of interest in business, maybe they don't, who cares, doesn't matter. Open space style projects, and everything, the learning is all based around project learning, okay? Where the kids come up with the ideas and heavy emphasis on art and creative thinking, so obviously we'd want to really focus there, but then also part of the measurement of this for them is the personal measurement of, okay, hey, you're really good at singing, you're really good at writing, you're really good at painting. Now on one end that's great, but what if we took it a step further instead of just focusing on that as if, okay, we're setting you up for a life of just, you're going to be the starving artist doing your art, okay? That's a very limited range that we get them thinking, because it's all about just creating and its personal expression, but there's no mindset of like, well, how do I create value for other people? And so that's why I wanted to bring the art side together with the more entrepreneurial side. I can't tell you how many artists, creatives I meet who do their artwork and they suffer and they suffer and they suffer simply because they have never learned to cross over and just learn how to promote their work a little bit. Learn how to reach out and spread their work. Learn how to have those conversations. Learn how to manage their art career as an actual small business. And think about what I find interesting is sometimes a lot of artists, creatives, the ones that, okay, their work is, it's okay, but they have a small enough following and a trusted relationship with that following starts to grow. And then that feeds back, like, hey, wow, I'm affirmed, and I'm actually freed up fiscally, financially, and I can make more things and do more things. And so suddenly, those typically are the artists and creatives who do really well. Okay. On the other side, then, you have the entrepreneurial set, the business people, those sorts of things, really good with the numbers, all this stuff. Where they really struggle, I find, is that they're very practical, concrete thinkers. They have their accounting down, they have their numbers, they have like the planning and the organization, the ability to manage each other and that sort of thing. But they really struggle with the branding, the broadcasting, the emotional promises of a brand and of a business. And so what if those same people were also trained in creative thinking, creative problem solving, right? How to speak to people's emotions, etc. And so what I picture is these two worlds, just like my metaphorical thinking here, mashed together. What if you had a kid who hates math, but you send him out and say, okay, you're going to make a lemonade stand. And with the lemonade stand, I don't care how much you sell. Okay, do your best, sell. But we're going to learn how to do really basic accounting, right? How much did you pay for lemons? So how much do you now know that you have to make in order to get into the realm of profit, and how to do the bookkeeping, right? Think about the power of that. It's just a kid in a lemonade stand. They're out there. They're not sitting in a classroom, right? They're learning how to communicate with people. They're learning how to broadcast their intentions, right? They're learning as well just how to manage themselves, possibly manage others, and projects and resources. They're learning math, they're learning writing, they're learning verbal communication, right? All those soft skills that are really hard to teach in a regular classroom, right? They're getting it right away. And they don't even know it most of the time. In their minds, they're just trying to sell lemonade, right? And so what I was thinking of was just like some way that what if we learned math? What if we learned writing? What if we learned public speaking, communication, and all these things, but they're tied to entrepreneurial or artistic projects? And that's the vehicle, not textbooks, not tests, not necessarily written essays, but things that have real impact for the kid, where they're the agent making it happen. And even if it doesn't happen, even if it collapses, we at least have a sense of like, okay, why did that not work out? Okay? So to me, that seems like a really, really powerful way of doing education. And especially that, I think it's also important, think about a way a classroom is set up. All schooling is set up as a punishment for failure, right? You don't do that well on this project, it's not up to snuff, or this paper, it's not up to snuff, you get a C. You did even worse, you get a D, you get an F, right? So all efforts, all things are always, it's a punishment. This would actually be, okay, I understand we want to be up to standards on certain things, but think about how many of your friends, or maybe your own kids or your grandkids, or your nieces and nephews, how they started off really loving learning, really curious, really wanted to launch all sorts and try different things, and slowly but surely over time, they try less and less. They sit at their desks, they raise their hand, like they just slip into that mindset of I'm just gonna do what I'm told. And oftentimes it's the least, like they just do the least amount to get them by. Their motivation is gone. Okay? And so in this environment I'd like to create where it's like, yeah, hey, you got a sweet idea? Let's go for it. Let's build something. Let's see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, oh well, no big deal. We'll try something else, right? So we want to encourage taking risks. We want to encourage lots of small failures. In fact, we'll embrace failure. Failure is a good thing.
Good teacher.
Right? Yeah. And we'll embrace lots of iterations. Like, okay, so you still work in your lemonade stand? Well, maybe instead you want, oh, you're a break dancer? Fine, let's put a hat out in the middle, you go break dance the street corner for a little while and see what happens. Okay, you only got $3 this time? What if we changed our time? What if we went during this day or that day? What if we put up a slick looking poster of you so you look like a little bit more of a business or something like that? Then what happens? Go break dance again. Like, see, it's all experimentation and iteration to see what happens. And again, failure is a good thing, right? It's not even, it has zero stigma to it. And so in my mind, what you would get then, ideally, is you have students who are willing to try stuff. They would have a mindset they're always, in fact, they want to come up against that discomfort of trying something new and putting themselves out there. I think that's another important soft skill that you can't teach in a classroom. You can force a kid to get up and do a speech, but this would be coming from them, like, okay, I need to promote this, I need to talk about this, right? And so that's kind of what I envision for a blend. And then the next part of that, so what we have blended right now, we have art entrepreneurship, we have education, like this kind of blended model there. Education through projects and direct experience, that sort of thing, right? And if we could eventually score a space, what I've pictured was that we have some great open space. One half would be the school. The other half would be small businesses, artists, studios, all this on this side, just kind of working and doing their thing. And at any time, those kids can run over, knock on a door and be like, hey, I know that you're really good with this or that part of business. Can we ask a few questions? And at the same time, those folks can come over here and mentor the kids, ask questions, check in and see. And so the school would benefit from just having all these business leaders and artists here on this side, right? And what the business leaders, what they get a direct channel to influence and kind of see the upcoming, and and kind of see where, okay, where are our future employees, our future possible business leaders, et cetera, entrepreneurs coming from. They get a direct channel into the up and coming talent, and they get a hand in their success. Right? And so you have this kind of great hive mix going. I don't know if that's probably the Agile thing, right? Sort of, in some ways. And so,
Not the way I just had it explained to me, but
oh, okay.
turns
To
out.
me, it's a move back. It's a move back to where we were with apprenticeship programs.
Right, yeah.
Before the factory model of education and all that bullshit.
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
So, I mean, in a sense, if I can start talking.
Sure, please do. Right, tell us who you are.
Yeah, well, and I basically did the same thing you're talking about for ecological restoration over the last year and a half. I started a school, basically got kids together and started just doing apprenticeship, basically finding mentors and saying, okay, you're cool, you're doing cool stuff, how can you teach us, what can we do for you? And then they'll have work for us, and we were actually, in like 6 months, I took these kids, like 6 of us, and we learned, what did we do in 6 months? We learned how to timber frame, we built a house, we learned how to use heavy machinery, we learned how to cut down trees, we built giant gardens out of it, we learned how to work with ponds, we learned how to work with beavers, we're grafting 1,000 trees right now, so it's like, and then talking to kids in college studying sustainable agriculture, they don't even have a fucking idea what a plant is. It's just like they're
Haven't
not
even touched on
they
it.
don't have the patterns of. They don't even know what a mustard family looks like. They can't identify. So it's like the things that forget that. Let's go fix the world. Get out of the school. Get out of the classroom. Stop with this bullshit, and let's just really get to work doing the things we need to do. And you can learn. And why you don't know what you need to learn until I'm a computer programmer, and it's all exploratory. So you're always in there. You don't know what you're going to hit until you hit it, and then you try to solve it when you find it. And that's what we're applying in our things. And we're not going to. We don't know what we're not going to sit in a classroom and learn something. We're going to go do a project. Oh, we need to learn about this because this project requires it. Okay, that requires us to learn what we need to do. And then having errors is beautiful. I mean, the more problems we have during the workshops we have is just like. We had like hydraulics explode and just oil going everywhere. I'm like, oh no, it's the end of the project. No, that was the beginning of the project. We learned so much because of that problem that would never have occurred out of the situation. And another beautiful thing, I don't know if it's kind of it's an exchange out of that, but one of the most beautiful things I learned for locking down knowledge in my workshops is having it basically be like a week long and have anybody come at any time. And that's critical because basically the people that want to get there, they learn that they get there the first day, and I want to learn this. And then most of the stuff we do is modular, like timber framing. You learn like one little piece. You learn almost the whole thing in the first day, and then you start applying it over all these different pieces, right? And so anybody comes in on the third day, everyone peels off and starts teaching. So you have all this, if you keep people coming in, you have everyone peels off and teaches. So you just learned it and you immediately get to teach what you just learned. And I've always tried to put that ability so the academy isn't just like teacher and student and this is what they know. It's it's like get you off and then we're all in this dialogue together trying to explore. So
I want to go to your school.
you're gonna come. I'm gonna rope you up in there. So we're building. We have a schoolhouse. We have a beautiful workshop we're working on. We got like 20,000. We got a big grow room. We're putting in a greenhouse and a hoop house. Up in
Cool.
Pablo, an hour north of here. But
Nice.
Missoula's, I don't know. It's been virtual, but there's this like huge. I mean, what you're saying is just all those principles make. I mean, I've been applying those, and those are the ones we want to use, right?
And you're getting the math, you're getting all sorts of things in there,
Getting
really.
the right now we're doing. It's beautiful. I found another farm. We're doing farm to table. We're gonna do cooking.
Yeah.
We're doing cooking lessons, and we're doing we're doing. I mean, we work every single thing we want to do. We just workshop it. In the sense, and then record it, and then put that in. It's like a pilot project. We feel like we've been documenting all these different workshops, and then now we can systematize it and start floating people through. Wow. And then we're making it like a skills web, where you know timber framing, but of course, in an event to closed loop system, timber framing requires forging, requires making tools, requires all these other different skills which you can then link in. And then you mentioned Montessori, and that's the method I'm trying to use, not the Montessori method now, which is just a religion based on, but like what her initial topics were was like you set up an environment for a child knows when they need to work on walking, they know when they need to work on learning to read, they know when they need to work on these different things. They have an internal desire to learn. and you just set up an environment so that they can figure out where they want to learn it. So that's the same thing with the academy. I want to have 1,000 projects going on, and if someone comes there and they don't want to, I hate painting, but this girl loves painting. We need to paint a floor. Oh, I want to paint the floor, right? So it's like we get enough people and diversity in the system, and things just, I don't know. I've seen a lot of work happen with just basically putting an older guy that doesn't know anybody with a bunch of kids together, and a cross-generational transfer of knowledge, and like busting out massive work for him, and then all the kids leave with this massive amount of knowledge, and it was just all, I don't know, with zero money. So it's like,
Wow.
yeah, it's kind of, so that's why I see what you're doing, and we need something like that in Missoula, right?
There is a woman who's working on putting together that, she's a friend of mine, and she's looking at the
Nelson? Not Kaya's mother, no.
I know Kaya.
Kaya Judah Nelson?
Yeah.
Young girl, her
Yeah.
mother.
I know Lizzie.
Yeah.
We're neighbors.
Lizzie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Lizzie was looking to buy, she's looking
The
to
old
buy
co-build.
a large building to try to do a certain similar thing. Like, I went on a land visit with her looking at that property. It was,
Right.
yeah, so there's,
Were you there last week?
no.
We went and looked at it.
It's in Southern California, probably.
Yeah, but I don't know if you've seen that property, but she's working on it.
Is she
I've
still
been
talking about the one, are we talking about the same person right now?
Yeah.
And are we talking about the place that Free Cycles is in, that complex?
No.
And now it's on 3rd Street,
Yeah,
the
the
lumber
old
place.
co-build is on the
Yeah.
3rd. It's like east of Good Food Store,
Okay.
right where the railroad tracks come through.
You guys know about the City Museum in St. Louis, which is her big push? Anyhow, I'm diverging now.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
But-
anyway, she is looking for that kind of thing to happen there.
Right.
And I was talking to her about co-housing because my background's in that. And she's working with Homeward. It's a huge piece of property. But that whole idea, and I made a couple other notes. My name's Ann, and I work with MUD and Five Valley Seed Library. And I'm working with my husband right now to put together a building that's got a little coffee shop and 2 commercial kitchens in it. Anyway, my experience with people in general is that you're talking about writing and art and dance and music and theater. People do best what they actually do second best. And I have found that I can make money doing something that isn't close to my heart. And it's very hard to sell your writing or sell your art and be good at that. So I think that probably the best situation with that is to let people do their art, but hook them up with somebody who can do the business side of it for them, as opposed to them having to handle that, because it's just frustrating.
Right.
It's really time-consuming and difficult, because their brain doesn't work that way.
Right.
And then there are people who can kind of do both. But people who are artists don't generally have good skills in that. So.
Yeah, that's the vote on it.
But there's no reason we all shouldn't be able to have time to be artists. It's
No.
like this, the society is making everyone have to go get all this money to have all this shelter, to pay for all this fuel, to pay for all this food. It's like, if we can get the shelter and the food out of the situation, there'll be a lot more time in there for all of us to pursue those artistic pursuits.
And also just having those definitions. This person is a musician. This
Right.
person is
We
a
don't
writer.
have to be
This
that.
person, it's like,
Yeah.
the way our society is gone is like everybody has to fit into this cubbyhole. And so many people are,
Yeah.
more the Montessori or the fluid school system.
Right.
Well, synergy, you don't know, I mean, how can you can be a dentist, but how do you know that dentist wouldn't actually be a better dentist if he was a rock climber, if he was something else, or if he was just something else? It's
They haven't had a chance to play around and try it.
or where does that cross happening? Where does this cross-pollination, that diversity that happens from,
We're very fortunate to be in the United States because we allow failure. Now, if somebody in Brazil had set up the space shuttle that blew up, they'd never work again. Here, it's a learning experience, and all those guys at NASA still have jobs. So
America has hope of it. If you go to
Yeah.
Germany, you talk to those kids about, like, do you want to start your own business? Do you want to, like, go, oh, no. It's all, like, the system, actually going out on your own and trying to change the world. It doesn't even enter into, like, the social psyche. It's just kind of, So we're at least a little bit more fortunate that way.
It's discouraging a little bit here because Vista has been directed that they are only supposed to promote STEM education, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. There's no A in there for art.
Right.
And so anything that Vista has to do now with teaching kids art projects that are nature related, those are out the window. Yeah, it's really
What is
unfortunate.
Vista?
Vista? Volunteers in Service to America or something like that. And they are...
Like the AmeriCorps?
Yeah, it's a division of
It's
AmeriCorps.
Yes.
So.
And they have in Missoula provided really good service to a lot of nonprofits around here for years. But the focus has changed radically, and so it's a little unfortunate. It's still that No Child Left Behind thing, which is ridiculous. Yeah. But what do you really think?
Oh, a few teachers I did talk to that they were stressed by it. This was down in Stevie, and I think in Arizona too. And I kind of figured this person was speaking collectively for all the teachers in America. It wasn't working, and children weren't learning, and they were being left behind, basically. And I saw it firsthand with my daughter when she actually, yeah, we were in Ohio. We've moved quite a bit. Kyra came over for the afternoon, and the two girls were talking, and they were first graders, or second graders. Either way, they were little girls, and they were all stressed out what they got on the math test. I forgot what they called it, but every morning they had math timing, and they had to get 30 problems or X number of problems done in a minute or under a minute, and it was pass or fail, and they couldn't proceed beyond that level until they passed it, every single question. These two little girls were stressed out like they were adults. And when I saw it firsthand, I was like, these two little girls from two different families entirely are stressed. What does it say about the rest of the children in the country? Because I came here. A number of years later, we moved back to Montana, and the principal down at Stevie and one of the teachers, I got a chance to talk with them that morning. She kept on saying, we did it, we got all the numbers and we did it. And the way I figured out what she was trying to tell me was the kids passed all the tests. The principal, an adult, was freaking out. And her stress level was like she was ready to have a nervous breakdown because her school wasn't passing. And I realized then, I was like, this isn't working, but no one's saying anything. That's the problem. No one's collectively, no one's coming together saying, we're not going to do this because this isn't working, and we refuse.
All that effort they were putting into that, the kids weren't learning. The kids were being trained to respond. They weren't learning.
The emperor has no clothes here. I don't know how anybody can think putting a bunch of kids in square boxes for most of their childhood is training them for the world. It just doesn't make any sense. They should not be in a classroom listening.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
It's training them to be serfs.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Training them to sit in a box, sitting down. That's not learning. Learning is out there interacting with the world and creating and making things and interacting with people and cross
There are
generational.
already a few people doing that, and they don't want anybody else in. They don't want anybody else in the club.
I don't know.
The kids these days are being trained to be a natural resource, to be used and exhausted.
Well, they've been trained. They were marched off by the militia back off the farms into the classrooms, and the literacy rate dropped. Actually, it went from like 97 to like 92 once they put them into schools. So I don't know. Forget about what we did to the Native American population by putting them in schools. So.
Yes, the stats.
It's how it's being taught.
Yeah.
No, I believe
Exactly. Everybody needs to be educated, yes.
Education, but I don't
But
know.
you can't just let people run wild and, be educated and learn. You can't just let the child run off and play in the field all day long. You do need guidelines, and you do need, I found out, if you don't master your own spiritual self, if you don't master your own discipline, you're not going to be able to learn. I found this out to be true. You won't, the person won't, they don't teach that in schools. And I realized that years ago, I was like, I needed to master certain things so I can just be able to say, hey, you got to do your checkbook today. Hey, your kids are hungry. You have to go to the grocery store. You got to have some self-discipline. But the thing is, what I realized years ago was all they're really doing with the school system in America, the way it is set us up to go to work, just like in the factories, this military style of teaching, and we're just numbers.
But there are no more
It is-
factories here. We have to be creative and try to keep
Factories,
ourselves out of
but
this.
it's not like it used to be at all. And yeah, we do have to be creative because, well, I think a lot of people in America need to just, not that they don't realize it, I think everybody realizes, it's just admitting it and saying it out loud. That life is over. That's done. That century's done. We need to be creative, like you're saying. We need to.
What would be your perfect school?
My perfect school. Well,
Like,
since
what
you're
would you
asking-
do, like,
I've
to
been
make a
thinking,
perfect school?
the last couple of months,
Or
back
close
and
to
forth. I'm gonna be enrolling in September for art and at UM, and my goal is to be teaching somewhere in the world, somewhere, wherever I end up. I'm not worried about it. Some people are. I was like, you know what? Wherever I end up, that'll be great because I'll be a free agent when he becomes 18 in a couple of years. My son Joshua. So I've been thinking, what kind of teacher am I going to be? Well, how am I going to teach? And then today I was thinking, that's not going to work maybe. This idea of, oh, we got to teach it like this, we got to teach it like that. And I was even thinking about this morning. It's like, okay, maybe that won't work. So I'm formulating, well, how are you going to teach? So I'm still in that budding period. But yeah, how would I have a school? Because and we're not the only ones who think this, because I was watching one of Susie Orman's specials, and part of her show, she said in it, it's going to change. Teachers are going to be valued. They're going to get paid more money so they can actually survive. She goes, this will change. And she said this a couple years ago. And when I knew that when somebody who's not even, as far as I know, she's in the business world. Everybody knows who Susie Orman is, but she's in the business world, and she knows that industry, stocks, bonds, the whole stock market, back of her hand. It's a good thing, coming from somebody who's not really, seemingly not connected to the world of education. So that gave me a lot of hope. I was like, yes, more people are on board. We're not just out here all alone that we want to change. People are actually starting to say, hey, we got to change how we teach our children. But your question, I don't really know yet, offhand. Maybe in a half hour, I might probably think of some ideas. Since I'm going to be hopefully teaching art, that's my goal, to let the kids be the most creative. To do what with my kids when they were little, they were like, this is no good, and they'd be down on themselves. What is art? And I said, art is whatever you create it to be. But I knew that in a way, there was like, well, here's this old standard, this is what art is. And then my idea is like, well, just because you say that's art doesn't mean, everybody says it's art, but maybe it's not. So I told the kids, art is art is art. So they would just go and create instead of like, oh, I'm no good. I was like, no, I don't want to see that. I was like, okay, kids, I want you to, if you're gonna, it doesn't matter what you create. I wanted them to believe in themselves, is a good way to put it, to believe in themselves and create art. And they have, they're really good at it. So, I'd like to help the children, whatever path they're on, to set them in that path.
Okay.
And I think through art, when people are creative, and they're little, because I'm sure it happens to everybody, you find out what you're good at, you're like, I have to do this. And that gives them the emotional background, the stability that this person believes in me, I can do this. And they find out through the reinforcement, a positive reinforcement, that they can do things. And they build on that, and they take it with them. They find out through the teacher that they have value. So that's, a lot of teachers don't teach that everybody has value. So that's part of where I'm going to be going with the kids, is like, whatever you make, you can decide whatever it is, but it has value, and you have value.
Okay. And actually, I think that'd be a good question. I'd like to, before we completely, how much time do we have? 15 minutes? Okay. And just kind of, I'd love to gather from all of you, like, what in your mind would be your vision of like a great school and a great classroom? What would that look like? What would happen in there? So Ann, could you go and we'll just kind of go around? So go ahead, Ann. So,
Well, I've got a lot of teachers in my family. My mom was a teacher, my dad was a teacher, a number of my brothers and sisters and in-laws are. I do remember an interview with a guy who was a science teacher, and he said the kids loved the first part of the class because things blew up, things fell apart, things make noise, they steamed, and he said, then after that he tested the kids and they hadn't retained anything. They had focused on the bells and whistles and they hadn't learned the basic formulas for why this is working or what the interaction of the chemicals was or what the geology was. So I think there needs to be a balance between sitting in a classroom and out there. So your concept of having space for kids to do a variety of things, I think is excellent. And so that's what I would think would work.
hi, Jeff.
Hi, Dave.
So you just kind
Sure
of
was
arrived.
waiting
We're kind of just, for the last 15 minutes, just going around and asking everyone, like, what in your mind would be, like, an ideal and perfect school? Maybe not even perfect, but just a great idea of a school. If you could create your own from blank slate, what would it look like? What would you have your students do and that sort of thing, or the kids? So I don't know if you want some time to think, or you want something to go for it. Okay, go for it.
90% outside learning.
Okay.
And inside too, but I think you can teach almost anything about math, science, literature outside. And there's actually an example of where that worked. And I have a man that you could talk to about that.
Right. Okay.
All the others have already talked about it so eloquently. But I think that a teacher should enable the child to realize his own self. Like she was saying, the value. And so that what he would like to learn, what he would like to achieve in his life, what is his calling. And so then they can have an unfettered perception and not the dogma and superstition, but their own knowledge, their own insight.
You guys kind of heard from me, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much beating the dead horse at this point. But yeah, the kids need, and I mean, everybody, even for their entire life, you need to be in situations that are actually going to use the things that you're learning, or learn things that grow out of the situations. Like okay, one example. I mean, I paid my way through college by tutoring, and it was mostly math and science stuff that I was tutoring. These kids were, practically adults. Not only did they not know basic math and science, they didn't know how it could be relevant. And one of the things that it took me a while to figure out is to just posit situations. Like, okay, you need to understand math to keep the plumber or the renovator from ripping you off. That was one way, a concrete way to get people to understand what good can math do? Keep people from ripping you off. And you just need to be able to put a concrete situation, even retroactively, you can still present situations like that. So if kids had situations when they were this tall where they had to actually have real fun situations with stuff blown up, it's like, that was cool. Why did it do that? How can we make it do it again? How can we make it blow up a little bit different? How can we make it blow up bigger? Wait, not bigger, you'll hurt somebody, but make it blow up to the left. Okay. And then they'll learn about math and physics and chemistry and working together. And, 30 years later, when they're working in a business, they might realize, hey, I can apply that chemistry I learned as a kid to this problem that my customer has in some completely off-the-wall industry. You have to get past the idea that you learn a few things as a kid, and those are the things you learn, and then you go off and do something irrelevant. No. And even if you find a calling, your calling can change, and you need to be open to that, willing to just jump off the cliff and figure out what to do just before you need to land. And I think that all of those things are things that are just being said, oh no, you don't need that, or no, you're not allowed to learn those things. Yeah, so, learn outside the classroom, learn in situations, and never stop learning.
Natalie?
All right.
You've been quiet.
Yeah, I've been listening.
So briefly, before you get to your question, I'll just describe that. Before I came up here for grad school, I did outdoor and environmental ed for about a year and a half in North Carolina and New Jersey, which was great because we had school groups coming in, and we'd have them anywhere from a day up to 3 days at like a camp type situation, and we actually were fulfilling their requirement. Sorry, that's their like outdoor or environmental ed requirement. They kind of cram it into those 3 days. So that's essentially all they got. It was great, but that's all they got. And that was the shift when school stopped coming out so much for 3 days instead of having a school group Monday morning through Wednesday morning, and then another one come in Wednesday afternoon through Friday afternoon. They shifted to a lot of them coming in for 1 day, or if they were doing the 3 days because they were further away, they only come in for 2 anymore. But anyway, that was just kind of a little bit of background. And I've also spent this past 6 years supplementing, working on websites and doing a bunch of other stuff with substitute teaching. So I've been in K through 12, every school in town, a lot of schools, probably every grade, every class, from Spanish to math, chemistry, kindergarten, everything. And there are a lot of times where I think, I could do this. I could go back and get teaching certification, but I don't want to because it bugs me. Something about the whole system, the whole school system really bugs me. And I've had people say, well, why don't you get your teaching certification? Because I don't think I can do this.
Could I say something?
Sure.
Or when you about teaching certification. I mean, I got my physics degree, and I thought, let me get a teaching certification. Lots of people say do that because I didn't want to go to grad school. I just wanted to, get out of school and work and do stuff. And so I took 1 semester towards my teaching certificate, and the level of education in the College of Education was so abysmally low.
That's why actually that was
Yeah.
attractive to
It's like, going from physics to education, it was,
Good job.
whoa, no wonder the schools are screwed up. So anyway.
Yeah, and that too, I kind of think, I don't know, and to teach like one subject, I mean, as far as like planning goes on teachers' end, that's great because you got one, if you're teaching Spanish, you're preparing for, you may have different classes, but you're essentially doing one thing. But it's boring. I like subbing because I'm in all these different classes. Even if I can't help them with their advanced math because it's just been too long since I had it, I can try or help, coordinate them or actually ask them. They did well with. So my kind of ideal, I guess, classroom or school would definitely be on the outdoor education part, indoor as well, and kind of a combo with what you guys are saying as well. You need a little structure. I mean, still you want to ensure that you're giving everyone the opportunity to learn these subjects that they don't think they're interested in, or they don't think that they're going to be good at, because they might be, and they may not. A lot of people find out when they're after college that they're actually interested in something else, or they're good at something else. So some of that introduction, so you're introducing all those things, but I've heard different people speak. I had a class that I took at the university in grad school, which had nothing to do with what I was in school for, but it was on physics-based education, and they did projects when he used to teach in schools. He'd have a big class project they did every year, building something and incorporating everything into it. So it's kind of, it is kind of a hodgepodge of what everyone's saying, but definitely a lot of times more outdoor. I still have a hard time staying inside when it's a nice day. It was so nice out here earlier, and I'm kind of going, I need to go outside at lunch. And also, I think, like team building and leadership skills, because that was something I did as well, and if you can incorporate that into it. And sometimes that can happen from the projects, but we did like the low ropes course problem solving, where they have to figure out, you give them like, this is your goal, to get from point A to point B. This is what you can and can't do. And then step back and monitor for safety. So they don't do something that would injure themselves. And then that's where a lot of the figuring stuff out happens.
That came up over there, the safety, make sure it's a safe space.
Yeah, 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 and it was just, so that they're not doing something that involves dropping a kid from a very high height and
Stop watch reading.
it's a good idea, but,
I can't remember who said
kinda
it.
risky.
The best, I can't remember who said it, but it was the best way to learn is to teach. And so if the kids are helping to teach each other,
Yeah,
Okay.
it's most effective.
That too, which kind of also goes into back towards the Montessori one-room schoolhouse type idea of having the olders teach the youngers. Because I did a little, when I was in grad school for journalism, multimedia piece on a little one-room schoolhouse in Victor, which was really fascinating. And they spent a lot of time outside, unless, even if it was raining, as long as it wasn't lightning right there.
Right.
Go outside. I'll pass now. Pass on.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I guess my perfect school. I flail so far away from the conventional because it's so recent in history and it's so broken, and it was for a certain reason that we don't even necessarily agree, and we think we equivalate throwing money at schooling is equaling to education when that just doesn't make any sense. And there's plenty of cultures where they don't have the situation in history and in the future. They have very, very vibrant lives full of creativity and love and community. And so, yeah, I want to tear them all down. I don't want kids in school at all. I don't want them there at all.
Unschool. Yeah.
With the current, I prefer more like an Ivan Illich type. I don't know if you've read Deschooling Society, but that's a brilliant book. It's very small. But it's more like it's the whole trap of equivalating schooling with education is the same trap we're equivalating, the medical industry with health, right? It's the same trap. We think bigger, more hospitals, more. We need to fix the hospitals to get healthier. No, that's not the method necessarily we need to go. Same thing, we don't need to fix the schools to get more educated. We need to somehow go to a whole nother higher level of understanding of how we educate people and what people learn. I was trapped in schools my whole life and didn't learn anything in them as far as I'm concerned. I learned, my chemistry teacher in high school, we didn't get through the first chapter. I read the first book in the first week. It's like how do you deal with people that, I don't know. So to me, it's like and I find so many kids now, they're like, oh, I'd love to go help you, but I got this student loan payment I gotta make. So I gotta go, oh, I went to college, I got $40,000 in student loans, but I can't help the world because I gotta go fucking wait tables. Because this system trapped me, because it sent me to college. I tell every kid, do not go to college, especially if you got debt. Screw it, let's go out in the world, let's go do something. Because I see too many people got in that trap, and it's just like, this is a whole workforce that could be helping us do something that can't. They got these bills and they're like, yeah, so it's just like the perfect school for me would be just an apprenticeship program where you're really working and doing things. You're doing things. You're not learning this because you need to learn this because the government says you need to learn this and this is the way. It's bullshit. You need to you're learning this because you want to do this in the world. That's the only, and it's like, but at the same time, we're in this history where we think we're this flying culture, but we're just free falling toward the earth and fast, right? It's like the culture. I think, oh, we're flying, we're really just falling. And so how to redirect kids into understanding the world and where their place is in the universe and the systems and all the stuff going on around them. That's what they need to understand, that everything they're seeing is connected to the past. The way I got blown up into food was I suddenly had every single thing I saw, I needed to know where it came from. I needed to know its history, how it was manufactured. And then I worked in manufacturing. I know how this is made, right? I know the silicone production. So it's like, but with food, you go to that. If people just understood where their food was from, this whole fucking world would change. I feel like if they understood, and if their actions were connected, I feel like this is a great conference, but all of us right now are part of the problem. We're using petroleum, we're energy efficient homes, you're doing jobs that conceivably are not helping out the situation. You're making computer programs, you're involved in, you're just burning up the earth, and you're not paying back the debt that you owe to the earth. And so how do we get kids to understand that? That's, if school isn't teaching that, then it's not teaching anything. It's not teaching their connections, and it's not teaching systems thinking. It's not teaching any of those things. It's doing a disservice at this time on Earth. I mean, maybe when we get into the next stage and it's beautiful and everyone has time, then you can go play your art and you can go make your stuff. But we don't have time for that right now. We need to fix this problem. So
It's hard enough to get people to see, like what I was talking about, just one step removed. Why do I need to know this? But where they are, it's like 100 steps. It's the whole huge system that everybody's a part of.
Yeah.
That nobody recognizes, or if they do recognize it, it probably scares the hell out of them, and they just duck and cover. And yeah, computers. Like 99% of what they're used for is a waste of time, a waste of effort, a waste of money, a waste of resources, a waste of personnel.
the systems
They
in
waste
place.
billions of dollars.
Do you know the size of Missouri got plowed under these last 2 years because basically the U.S. government's paying farmers to plant corn to have it fail so they get insurance payments. That's how much. That's the system that Obama and all this people set up that destroyed the earth this last time. I don't know. Now I'm just totally not talking about schools. So I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's
It was-
because a lot of people don't realize that the farmers are getting subsidies, and it doesn't matter if their crops pass or fail. The point is, years ago when I first saw this gigantic mound of oranges in California on a documentary about farm subsidies, I was just shocked. I was like, oh my God. There's people in the world who are hungry. That food, that mound of oranges, perfect oranges, nothing wrong with them, nothing wrong. It all could be shipped to them and they could have food. So this system is like, it's just nuts. And I think it's based on, who knows where it started, but it's not working. It's not
I saw a
working.
statistic recently, don't know how accurate it is, but somebody threw it out there, something like 40% of the food produced is not eaten.
There's times at my own home, things spoil accidentally, or forget them, but it's just like,
Let's not
It's
forget
just
that
stupid.
99% of food is produced 100% from petroleum.
Yeah.
So anyhow, that's food. So I think back to schools, it's like systems thinking. That to me is like the one thing that schools teach. A leads to B. They don't teach that the world is a huge ecology network. That if you kill wolves, the whole system degrades. They don't. I don't know. At the lowest level, a kid can understand that you need lively soil to make health.
That childlike imagination is an intuitive feel for all these emergent properties and system interconnections. That gets pounded out of us. It got pounded out of me.
it's all related to now comes back to, it's gonna affect the kids, it's gonna affect how everybody's being taught, because the public schools are run by the government, and I was, this one movie, I forgot the name of the movie, but in it was said that schools are run by the government, public schools are government. You're going to have your school dictated to you by the people who are running our government. It's supposed to be all of America, but I think a lot of people forget that we are this government.
School is a tool for social control.
Yeah.
I mean, that's for the government, and that's
And for the corporations.
what it is. So it has a byproduct of forcing information into people that then they can somehow find useful, but its main purpose is not necessarily, in my view, to educate them. It's social.
Where the teachers are really truly able to teach what they need to teach, and that
And the students need to be there to get that information. They don't need to be there just to be there.
no, what I mean is when the teacher has all these worries, they cannot effectively teach. If they're sitting there worried about paying the mortgage, oh my God, my mother's sick, oh crap, I'm going to be short on the rent this month, my paycheck, I have this, they're not paying me enough, I can't move to another district, they're full, or all these things, because it's related to how much the teachers are not being paid. If that went away, and they were, because I've had that, where I've been paid enough money, I start thinking about, I'm a better person.
What makes us what is teaching supposed to do? She should get the capacity of this teachers should be the most high in society.
That sounds like let's send more money toward education and fix the problem. Let's pay their teachers more to fix the problem.
No, it's not just about pay though. It's about a whole
I know we'll get
sense of
there,
importance. Teachers are treated like garbage, and they should be the most. They should be the people that optimize our humanity.
It's amazing the numbers. But it won't always be like that.
Right.
We're here talking about.
The money's the least
talking about
important
it.
part of that.
If you're talking about these issues, that means there's a chance for change. And change is already, it's started. So that's a hope and a positive.
Right.
It's not hopeless. That's what, a lot of people are like, it's hopeless. It's like, no, it's never over. It's never hopeless. It always gets better. I try to stay in that vein.
I mean, as far
As
as
much as
money
possible.
goes, we probably don't really need.
Probably not,
Do
but
we really need money?
We need some form of barter.
Yeah, we need some. Yeah, but I mean, as far it doesn't need to be as pervasive, and it doesn't.
No, I
need
mean,
to
there's
be
a, time banks are here, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of different local currencies in a sense.
Yeah, you need money for something that you can't barter locally and immediately. You don't need it for everything all the time to base your idea of somebody's importance on it.
Well, money's not the true wealth of this world. It's just a tool that we can use.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah.
It seems to be also the thing is that with the entrepreneurship end, it have to have with B corporation more socially responsible, engaged. What are those types of businesses called again? So it would be
Green business? I don't know.
green businesses or something that is
One thing
not
I-
just profit driven, but
one
it's
point
also
is-
socially
Social
driven.
responsibility.
What's that?
Corporate social responsibility.
Right. So really
Highly focused corporate social responsibility kind of practices or businesses. That's their
One thing I
mission.
see as a collision there, though, is that the educational woman here, in that sense, that same feeling of this child, no matter what it does, is good. That in the entrepreneurial business world is a bad idea, and then there's a big collision because you got to say no, that's crap, and you have to be able to take. So I feel like in that academy, it has to have more of that feel of honest criticism, and honest criticism of the interpersonal relationships, because a lot of these different.
Because that's a lot of where the failures.
A lot of where the failures in an academy.
Who you choose to partner with, who you choose to depend on. You need to learn. Oh man, don't do that again.
And some of that will have to be organic learning and organic stuff that'll just arise out of okay, I've got this project, I've got this endeavor, I'm going to try and launch.
We're going to design it all right
Who
here.
are all the
in this
moving
circle.
players? Can you imagine you're a kid? You're just okay, I want to start my own skateboard company. Who can I grab around me who knows how to do this, right? This kid here, he's a good drawer. This kid here, she's really good she understands the advertising maybe. And I can reach out to maybe those people who have the sawmill, they can at least tell me something about wood, right? Or maybe I know there's some woodworkers in town I can reach out to, right? When the kid's in charge and they're the one navigating through all of it, I think a lot of that stuff will kind of organically it'll figure itself out, and it won't be us, the teachers or the school, that figures it out necessarily. We can guide. We can kind of be like, well, here's some resources over here. Here's some information. This person over here might have it, but that puts the kid in charge to make the decisions, to run with it, or even to decide, you know what, this seems like a good idea. I'm not ready to execute fully on this one. Instead, I'm going to do T-shirts, because I can take the same graphics and all that, and they can pivot all they need to, and that sort of thing. And so,
isn't that how they run the entrepreneurial program at the university? They give them a project, and then.
Or it's like an incubator, but we're talking middle school incubator.
yeah,
Montessori
little incubator for little kids.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's what I'm thinking.
Give them a project, and then they assess the project that they want, and then you assist them with finding resources, and then they have to approach the resources.
Right.
They still need adult supervision.
Right.
Kind of. But if they identify what they want.
And it's there. It's welling up from them internally. So the internal motivation is built in, right? So,
So it could be sort of like a middle school final project like they do in high school. They have their end of the year project with their seniors, so maybe.
but every day that's what it is. It's project, 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 nonstop.
Oh, every day.
They, and at least that's what I would like. Projects or experimentations and other things. So they've got one or two projects going, and they're trying to learn saxophone. Why? I don't know. Just because it might be interesting, right?
Yeah, my friend just went over to Evergreen. They have a similar kind of model.
Sussex used to do that. I don't know if they do anymore. But when my kids went there, it was very hands-on, experiential, experiment.
Same kid is going. That went to Suffolk went over to Evergreen to try to camp out and go to school there. I guess they don't. They just do one class per semester, and they kind of can mold their own setting, and they're all self-directed.
And it's just, I think that's the other. When I think about this more, it's just kind of like. The traditional educational system, like as a student, your job is to meet the standards of this arbitrary kind of system and hierarchy set up. Whereas, like, the system, when I think of it, when you are an entrepreneur or artist or whatever, and you've got your own projects, what you're actually doing is you're trying to be the best person you can be, and that's success. And like and so you're trying to be the best business you can be. You're trying to be the best artist you can be. You can try to, and so when the ball is in your hands, then you're free to kind of try different things, make those moves, talk to different people, reach out, and so I think that's. I just think that would be the ideal learning model.
We need change agents in the school because the school paradigm initially was set up to create a culture in the United States for all the immigrants to speak English so that they could immediately go work in a factory and follow and conform to a specific standard and rule set. And we haven't changed that paradigm in 100 years.
Right. And that's the manufacturing paradigm that has totally died.
That industrial complex is done. We're over that, and now we're in the next evolutionary phase. And I think that that's really important. We have to change the culture.
It's a holistic phase, and it's a more nature-oriented phase,
When you still
which is
have
an indigenous person phase, which is what I said in the other classes, the Native Americans, and I found out the Tibetans will find out what the child naturally gravitates towards when they're young, and then they're nurtured in that direction.
Which makes the most
And
sense.
it's what somebody else was talking about DNA. You weren't. Nobody was in that class. You were. When Sona was talking about DNA, but it's in us what we're disposed towards doing.
So if we're truly disposed towards doing it, why do we need schools at all?
Right.
To conform,
Again,
to
because
be able to compete.
they were created to force you to conform. They didn't used to exist. People
No,
used to
I'm not
just
saying that,
Why
but
do we need
playing,
We still have cultural systems that help
right.
educate.
And so what was the purpose of them? What is the purpose of those systems
to
as opposed
feed
to what you're
the
saying?
culture that they
is it
lived
in
in.
school right
People
now?
were hunters and gatherers. So some people were hunters, some people were gatherers, because the whole complex of living in your society and your tribe was how do you enhance the tribe to extend its living capacity. So that was pretty much what everybody lived for in a pre-industrial world. You had a tribe that you lived for, and you either hunted, gathered, if you were agricultural organization. And that's pretty, how to make my family survive.
Even in European cultures, there was the metalsmith and the farmer and the.
I mean, virtually up until the Industrial Revolution, everybody was an entrepreneur. Everybody was in business for themselves and their families in a small city or culture.
And most of the third world, you still are.
Yeah, in China, for
You have your own
instance,
micro
everybody's
business.
their own
That's what it
business
is.
person. There's still not a lot of corporate over.
Yeah, no, you don't have a sign. Yeah, but
You might have a sign.
Here's your
Right.
side.
If you're an artist,
right.
you could make.
One thing about the school thing. Oh, sorry. What I've noticed is an interesting side effect of the whole No Child Left Behind and no arts in the schools. The 20-year-olds and 19-year-olds that I see coming into my college classrooms, they've had the least amount of art, music, and anything. So it's been completely hacked out. But okay, yes, on one end it's sad. Here's the interesting thing on the other end, though. Those kids that, yeah, they're hungry for it, and they find it by themselves. Like, how'd you learn how to play guitar and make, like, all this electronic music? They're like, oh man, I just go on YouTube and I just watch a ton of videos. I get the software, I steal the software, whatever, I pirate it, and they go for it. And they learn all self-driven. And so, ironically, without the arts programs, and I'm a person, I'm all for arts programs. I go into school, I do
The
arts
arts program might
programs.
have beat out the joy for it, right?
The ones that I mean, man, they're driven. They're going after it themselves. No one's telling them how to do it. They learn it themselves. I mean, so I get kids coming in who are like, wow, you're a really good rapper. And man, you're really good with, those are some pretty sweet beats. And then like, they show me what they can do on Photoshop. And they show me what they've written to kind of promote themselves and to get their next show and their next gig. Like,
See, it's interesting.
they find those skills because they want them, they need them.
You know, use of technology, was it good or bad? And it isn't inherently good or bad. And kids make a choice to just live in Farmville and Facebook, or they make a choice to access the amazing information that's on the web and then utilize it in a way that you can live in middle Detroit and be as poor as you want to be, but if you have access to a library computer, damn, you can do a hell of a lot of stuff.
And so that's what I find really ironic about, like, we have less arts in the schools, and for me at least, I tend to see more independent young artists just gunning. Like, they want to make it. They want to get their stuff out there. And
But
like,
how much did any of us ever get out of an art class in school?
right. Well, right. Most of our learning, when we think about it, we did it on our own,
I mean,
outside
I
of
was
homework.
already an artist before I went into school. I was already into science before I went into school. I was self-taught through school, and I still, you know, like I said, still the school managed to
But how
beat
much
a lot of that out of
how
me.
much autodidacts can't understand non-autodidacts? Maybe should everyone be an autodidact? Is that what we're saying? And
Maybe some people just aren't. I don't know.
Like he says, in classes, you're forced to adhere to their line and their direction, and Lord knows if you color outside the lines, you're kind of in trouble. And so that's sadly what happens in the public school systems, not all school systems, but public school systems. You need to color in the lines, or you're going to fail this test.
or you need to have more than one method. I was a one-on-one tutor for a lot of kids, learning disabled kid, high school kids, and then it would be like the teacher would have this one way to do a math problem. It's like, wait a minute, you can look. Oh, let's do chemistry and do that math problem. Let's do biology. Let's do. Oh, I understand. Okay. Oh, that's what the teacher meant. But unless you have a teacher that can really show more than one way, but maybe then you need more than one teacher, right? If I don't know.
And there's all the individual stories where they did have that teacher that saw that in them and nurtured them in that direction. I had an art teacher like that. My cousin, who's a year older than me, had the same art teacher, and I just noticed she wrote about him in her bio for her shows, so it happened.
Like you get like 3-4 teachers kind of wander in and out of the classes, teaching bits and pieces of what they know and what they can connect with what the last teacher just said.
Think of how a village works. I don't know the answer. I'm your parent. You want to go do this. The old man over there in that teepee, he can show you. So who says... I worked in a one-room schoolhouse, and I had kids that were up to 15 all the way down to learning to read, and they all helped each other, you know, and that was the coolest part. And if we didn't have an answer, we went to an encyclopedia, we looked it up, because we didn't have computers at that time. It was sort of pre-computer time, and so we actually had to look stuff up. But then we talked about it. Regardless of whether you were 7 or 15, we all talked about it as a group, so everybody brought in, and obviously a 7-year-old has a totally different idea about why frogs croak than a 15-year-old does, right? And so the conversations were awesome, you know, because everybody's bringing in their own point of view, and then we find out what's right, or is there a right, you know? And maybe they croak because they want to sing. Maybe they really do that. Is it only just to attract a mate? I don't know. I'm not a frog. So
that models also exist in small, like rural northern Montana communities where you have mixed ancestry, but everybody knows each other. So I go over to the neighbor's house because she decorates cakes, and learn how to do cake decorating. So the cities maybe by the way cities are set up in society today kind of squashes that opportunity. Just meet your neighbors on the bus or at the bus stop.
I think they have lunch coming in.
Should we all get some food and
I'm starving.
wrap up? Thank you for joining in late. It was kind of great to have you come by.
The question is, Alex, since you are and you're in the school system too, because that's that conversation we had before. Now that we know that No Child Left Behind is a failure, and the person who actually instituted it said it out loud, I made a mistake.
Years ago, a long time ago. Yeah.
But are the school systems open to making a big, huge change?
Now they're going to Common Core.
But Common Core still doesn't work because not all kids can fit into the same.
But I mean, and that's the same frustrations I see with teachers that they have these Common Core meetings, so they're still having to fit everything in.
My thinking in terms of strategy on that is you're not going to get in there to change and move a massive bureaucracy. You're just not. So instead, why not hut the bureaucracy, set up a great model, prove that it works, and compete with bureaucracy enough to the point where members of that bureaucracy are going to look over and say, wow, what those people are doing, that's working. We need to go talk to them. Right.
There are some Montessori public schools. I mean, they're Montessori.
Here in the United States?
Yes, and in Helena.
Really?
Yes. Right. And there's influence, throughout all sorts of levels in terms of
Do they pass
adopting
the
Montessori
elementary
teaching.
school level?
There are some. I mean, the point I think is not so much that the school system is a system and therefore is this thing that cannot be touched as a bureaucracy.
The lunch has arrived. I could use a couple people, help from a couple people to bring it in. Thanks.
The school system's made up of people, and it's made up of individual teachers, and
the school
they
board,
do.
the policymakers, that's where it needs to change.
Well, I mean, there are places that there's leeway for teachers to teach, ways that are very successful. Like talking about art in the schools. I went to Butte High School and had the best art program that I've ever heard of anyone in the state or in university level even having access to. And it wasn't so much having to color inside the lines as being provided. Hey, here's some wheels to throw pots on. Here's clay that the school will purchase so that you can spend the time in this environment and create. So there's a lot of leeway inside the system, right? And yeah, you can't entirely influence a big system, but you can influence individuals, and they have some leeway within their domain.
I think that's
and
kind of what
they're ready
Alex
to
was
go.
saying. If
And
you
yeah,
can create something
that's
like
what I would want. The larger model, like how to change. There's no way I can even address the whole let's change the public school education system. But what I can do, or what we can do, is for creating a really great space where good things are happening. There are going to be teachers in that system who are going to be like, what are they doing? Let's go over there, let's check them out, let's see what we can bring into our own classroom. There's going to be administrators who are going to look and just say, wow, what's happening there? There's going to be parents, frankly, who are going to my kid's unhappy here. We're going to defect over, right? We need to give a place, and if you want to call it dissent, by opting out and coming to that's going to be the number one mover and shaker. If it's a great space and what it's doing is working, teachers will defect to that model. Students, parents will defect to that model. That will impact the larger system. That will be a direct signal that says what's working is not working, and that will trigger a lot more change than trying to talk about policy level stuff that, like, that's all like above me. Maybe those policy writers will eventually come and defect as well and say, like, yeah, what's happening here, let's go back and from policy level now make some of that happen here.
Have you ever heard of Marva Collins?
No.
She was a teacher in the 60s. It's called Marva Collins Way, and she was in inner city Chicago. And basically, she was given students that she was told were retarded. And she individualized their education curriculum, and virtually everybody in her class went to college, while other teachers who denigrated her system and denigrated her and made it really hard for her, their students didn't succeed as well. So she proved a point that if you individualize an education to a child and spend that little extra time on them and also work with their parents, because their parents obviously were struggling, very, 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 very low class people, she was able to make a paradigm shift. Now, in the school system, sadly, she was rejected by the school system, which is why her book, and Diana Ross played her in the movie, was kind of went out there in the public because people could see that one person could make this massive change, because she changed a lot of people's lives. And I think it's helped people go forward within the public school system to have be willing to risk going against the system to implement different study paradigms, especially for kids that are failing, sort of like Willard's School. Okay, well, let's just take them out of school and make a whole another school where they can succeed, you know, willing to take that risk. So it's a matter of standing up to the system and saying, I'm willing to try it this way, and then see what happens, you know?
And I guess I don't even see it as like an antagonistic thing with...
Well, she wasn't it. I mean, it's not antagonistic. It's
right.
just these kids are failing and they're being called retarded, and they're not.
Right.
So the system was antagonistic.
Right,
to her.
of course.
She was trying to protest.
But I mean, I think the idea of like this, like the space that we're talking about, I'm definitely... There's lots of great teachers that I work with on a daily basis in that system, and it's not... I certainly am not interested in kind of going in there and telling everyone what to do and ripping it all down and all this sort of thing. I'm just more interested in like, all right, let's create something really cool and interesting and see if it works. And if it works, it's kind of like, it's a nice honeypot to attract really great and interesting allies on the inside of this system. And if they don't like it and it's not working, come over to us. If it is and they like it and they come over and they want to stay with us, great. If they come over, get some ideas, drift back into their little hive over there and make some change. Excellent. That benefits everybody, not just our little project.
I came in late, so if you can catch me up, is this in the idea phase?
Yeah, it's kind of, I'm kind of testing the waters right now. It's an idea that I've been thinking about for the last 5 years. Just 'cause, you know, I am one of those teachers on the inside in some ways, and just seeing this isn't necessarily working.
One thing that came to mind was that I worked for a while over at the Zootown Arts Center. They have their after-school program,
right?
But it's still kind of confined, even though they can write their lesson plans and do whatever they want. They're still stuck in a room. Well, they take them out sometimes too, but I think with the public school systems, where they go wrong too is they have a budget and they have so many kids and so many teachers, and that's a constraint right there.
Right. Yeah. And so that'll be other challenges to figure out. Like, is this what we're doing? Is it even scalable? Do we want it to be scalable? Do we lose a certain degree of effectiveness and abilities? Can it be replicated? Who knows? I don't know. We'll have to see.
If you see the need for it and you see the possibility, you're in the trenches. You're like on the front lines right now, so it must be a possibility.
So yeah, what I mentioned before, like the idea would be to, instead of launching some massive school with a building and all this sort of thing that requires massive amounts of grant writing, all this stuff, would be instead let's do a smaller model.
4-H.
Or even just, it runs for a month in the summertime. and to see what we can do with with a bunch of kids like this with this model in 1 month versus, and if it works, next summer 2 months.
You know, there's a lot of
3
professional
months.
people in this community that need babysitters for their kids, and they'd rather pay somebody to have their kids do something productive and creative or recreational than just babysit them. Not to tell you this is where you can get your money, but this is where you can get your money. Day camps.
Right, yeah, I mean, so
exactly, they're getting wildly popular.
we'd be contending with all the day camps in Missoula that explode in the summertime.
I worked with the Boys and Girls Club too, and there was a little bit of a homeopathy on there. I'm
Right.
not sure if I should say that. Who's going to say this?
So yeah, we're still in the idea phase.
That's cool. I think it's a great idea.
So yeah, I'm gonna meet with Jeff and we're gonna talk about Jeff Pepos and just the mock space and how it works. But the metaphorical reach that I was going for with this was, there's this great school called Brainworks out in San Francisco where it's all project-based, all science stuff, and they run all day, and the kids are boiling things, setting up experiments and projects, all kinds of crazy stuff. So great school. That's Brainworks, open floor plan. The building that they work in, kind of a warehouse, almost like. So that's one half of the model. The other half of the model is this place in Arizona called Gangplank. And it's all these businesses and artists, designers, all these working together in one kind of communal space. They all running their own businesses, but they're set up, the space is modular and set up so that they're always running into each other, talking, sharing what they're up to and that sort of thing. So even though it's all individual businesses in there, they're kind of like an activity hive in that way. So I thought, well, what if you had this school, and maybe it doesn't have to be as science-based as Brainworks, or it could be, but it's science, art over here, or something like that. And then all the businesses over here, and so but we put those two spaces together so that now you've got kids on one half trying all sorts of crazy stuff, and you have all these entrepreneurs and artists, etc., over here trying all kinds of crazy stuff, and there's all this crossover and kids talking to each other, and then talking, like a lot of mentorship and apprenticeship happening, and that was the metaphorical reach I was going for. It's like, what if we collided those two models together into one space? What would that look like? What could that do for a kid? What could that do for entrepreneurs and like established artists in the area? And what could come out of that?
Butte has a lot of empty buildings.
Yeah, I mean, so it'd be.
I was looking at
Right.
warehouses for studio spaces, Spokane or Butte.
Yeah. So.
But
Right.
smaller.
So. Yeah. We should go eat. We should go eat. Yes, thank you for coming. Thank you for filming for round 3.